their questions in for you.
Yeah, hello, welcome everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. As I was telling Matt, man, so far, knock on wood, so good. You know, we got through our individuals, we got through our 6 weeks in the fall, got all our scrimmages in, our scout day, our pizza bowl. So, you know, I know it's a little bit crazy in the outside world, but from our bubble here, this has been as normal a fall as it's been, which is good. We still got 4 weeks left on the field to get better. And as many of you, we've been celebrating our guys in the big leagues, right into the postseason, right into the World Series. So as soon as we're off this call, I have the privilege of going to my first World Series to cheer on Will Smith and the Dodgers. With that, I'll open it up.
Coach, hey, it's Jody Demling with Cardinal Authority. What does, as you're watching what Will has accomplished so far in such a short period of time of his career, what does that say for him, and what does it mean for you and for the program?
I think as coaches, we're always learning. I tell our players all the time, we learn a lot from them, especially the great ones. It reinforces, I think, what a great job our program does. You know, Coach Snyder was his catching coach. Coach Snyder and Coach Vrabel coach him in the world of hitting, and Coach Williams is the pitching coach. And so Will got coached by all those guys as well as myself when it comes to the base running side, but more so than just the coaches, the resources, the support system we have in place. And so I'm really proud of that. But you always have to give the most credit to the student athlete. And I've been asked a lot of questions about Will, and it sounds cliche-ish, but, you know, we're learning as coaches, and I tell our players, it's amazing. The guys that make it, you know, the All-Americans between the lines, more times than not are All-Americans outside the field to play. And so the Adam Duvals, the Chad Greens, the Nick Solaks, I mean, these are guys that you trust them with your family. You would trust them with your kids. You trust them with your bank accounts. Like, that's the type of people these guys are. And so that smile you see from Will Smith on TV, man, that's genuine and that's real. And we're all smiling along with him.
Hey, Coach, this is Matt McGavick with Sports Illustrated. You had some pretty big performances both at the plate and on the mound during the Pizza Bowl. How satisfied are you, not with how they performed per se, but how they competed and how the effort was during all of fall ball?
Well, that's the reason we do the Pizza Bowl, Matt, is the competition. You know, we just can't create that kind of atmosphere on a normal scrimmage, even though we'll do it before a football game or after. And in normal years, we'll open up the gates and try to get fans in here. But the Pizza Bowl, when you put on the uniform, and for those that don't know, the reason it's called a Pizza Bowl, it was like a football. It was a one-game event. It was such a powerful event for an inner squad that we said, why are we just doing this once? Why not do 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7? So we kept the name Pizza Bowl, but in drafting the teams, putting on the uniforms, putting on the lights, having the PA system, having the music, and this year having the radio station on 93.9, I mean, it was a great event. And so for me, I got to see the atmosphere, the pressure, the excitement from the dugout. And as we tell our kids all the time, you watch those big leaguers in the postseason, man, the joy, the excitement, the enthusiasm they're playing with. Our season is shorter than a big league season, and we almost have to play like that the entire year, if definitely not for our postseason. But I got to see a little bit of that excitement and enthusiasm in the Pizza Bowl. We had a walk-off win. We had a celebration on the field. We had the water being sprayed everywhere. We had the heckling back and forth from the dugouts. All the things that you kind of get in a spring game, we got as close to that as we could in our Pizza Bowl.
Dan, Tim Sullivan from the Courier. A couple of Will Smith questions. 5 years ago, he's hitting 242 for you. In a year, he goes from that to 382. He's your leadoff man. Which is pretty unusual for a catcher. What was the transformation there? First of all, and then I'll have a follow-up.
Yeah, it's I try to educate our fans, and I always talk about where I'm not patient off the field. I have a lot of patience in the baseball world. The Will Smith story is very common. You hear about the Brendan McKays. You don't have many freshman All-Americans that just do what he did for 3 years. You have more Will Smiths. You have more guys that hit 250, 270 as freshmen. You have the Birdie brothers who have 5 ERAs and limited innings as freshmen. And then in that sophomore year or into the junior year, you see the explosion. They get comfortable with college baseball, the scouting reports, the work ethic, working out in the morning, their bodies physically, mentally, the coaches help them make adjustments. So it's just a combination of, we just need time. Just give us time, and don't get too worked up when a guy has a 5 ERA or hits 250. If they got talent and they're willing to work, they're going to get better. And so for every All-American on that wall out there, I guess outside of McKay, the other 20-something, they didn't do it in their freshman year. They did it in their sophomore or usually their junior year.
What was the change that you saw in him? I mean, was he more selective at the plate? Did he get more muscular? What changed?
No, it's selective is a good word, because what happens is, and I have freshmen right now, if you watch us in a Pizza Bowl game or a scrimmage, you see some of these young hitters swinging at a ball that's like bouncing off the plate. And it's like, and they just look like they might not be good enough to play here. But they become selective as they get stronger. They can wait a little more, and they're just used to the 88 to 95 mile an hour with the 78 to 86 mile an hour sliders. And they just get more accustomed to it, and they just get better and better. And you see sometimes these organizations, they get criticized for trading a player or this and that. More times than not, they realize it takes time. It just takes time. And so a combination of getting stronger, getting more comfortable, getting the reps you need that you just don't have, the type of reps until you get into this type of program, as well as, being selective, recognizing, Will's done a little bit of everything. And you have to keep doing it. That's what we talk about. You don't just get to the big leagues, kick your feet up and arrive. The Chad Greens, the Adam Ingles, the Adam Duvalls, the Will Smiths, the Nick. So they have to work in the offseason as if they hadn't made it to the big leagues, and they're still working on those so-called weaknesses or the traps that they could fall into, whether it's being a hitter or a pitcher.
It's been said that he still looks like he's 12 years old. How old did he look when he showed up on campus?
Well, I don't want to say 12, but he does have a young face, and sometimes you don't like it when you're young, but, as you get to my age and some of our ages on the call, you kind of wish you had that young face. So he should enjoy it as long as he can.
Thanks.
Coach, this is Matt McGavick again. Going into fall ball, who are some of the freshmen, some of the transfers who performed the best, and who had some of the more notable performances overall? Or I guess a better question, who is someone who performed better than what you were expecting?
Yeah, before I talk about freshmen, because I always tell our coaches, let's not get too high or too low. And as Tim brought light to, some of these poor kids just really struggle. And it doesn't mean they're not good players and they're not going to be good players. I think the theme of this fall was, who are the guys that are going to emerge from being regulars, whether it's an everyday player or an everyday pitcher in the mix, who's going to take the next step? And you have to look at our pitching and our potential starting pitching, that a Glenn Albanese goes from a talented reliever spot starter to looking like he has a chance to win a weekend job. And if he stays healthy and has a good spring, can be a very high draft pick. You look at Michael Kirian, who had established himself as the closer. And I think he'd been an All-American last year in a normal year. I think his 6 saves go down as 6 of the easiest saves I'd seen in a long time. He's emerging, looks like a weekend starter. Adam Elliott, who is another very reliable reliever. And you can tell where I'm going with this theme. When you lose Reed Detmers and Bobby Miller, you the weekend starters, and the reason the Garrett Coles and those guys get those crooked numbers with all the zeros, the premium on starting pitching, how much they talk about starting pitching. So Albanese made the jump, Kieran made the jump, Adam Elliott made the jump, which were 3 right there. You know what you got in Luke Smith. You felt good about Michael Prosecki because he had 3 or 4 starts in a shortened season. And to me, those were the highlight guys of the fall, thinking of starting pitching, which means, okay, Dan, you just mentioned your top relievers are now possibly being starters. Everybody loves to know about the closer. Who are the back-end guys? And we've got 3 or 4 options there, but I think Jared Poland took the lead. That Jared pitched as a freshman, was more of a setup guy, actually struggled as a sophomore, if you want to call it the sophomore slump, but he was also trying to win the second base job. Now he looks like, okay, that's the Roger Williams type of closer that we seem to have every year, as well as he's still trying to win the second base job. But Jared Poland looks to be the front runner as one of the closers, because you need more than one, as you notice in these postseason games. The old fashioned, there's just the Mariano Rivera's, especially with the way the format is now, and you'd like to have Mariano Rivera, but you kind of got to have 2 or 3 guys that are able to close a game out.
Yeah, and you mentioned Brendan McKay earlier. Obviously, if he were there, your loyalties would be divided, to say the least. Given his shoulder surgery, do you see him settling on either pitching or hitting going forward?
It's a great question, Tim. I don't know. I think we always put probably pitching a little ahead of hitting, as that's what we've been talking about a lot on this call. So the value of the left-handed pitcher, you kind of always feel like that's a little ahead of the hitting. The nice thing is you could always fall back on the hitting, that he's a first-round hitter out of college. So if something doesn't go well with the shoulder, I think he can be a Gold Glove first baseman, hold his own in the big leagues as a hitter. But I'm assuming I'd be confident in saying you gotta try to get the pitching back, and that's where you're hoping he's going to be able to come back, and because we believe he'd be on that road, whether he'd be in the rotation or, my gosh, the shortage of arms. I feel like he would have started one of these postseason games, and his value would have been used throughout this postseason. And obviously not a knock on anybody they've been pitching, but you feel like, man, he could have only helped them if he was healthy right now.
With so many players now, U of L players in the pipeline, do you imagine that the World Series is going to be almost an annual thing for you?
Well, I hope so. I don't know about annual because it is so hard to get there. For me, what's annual is we've got big leaguers on rosters every summer, and that means we should have big leaguers in the postseason every year. And this year we had Engel with the White Sox, Green with the Yankees, Duvall with the Braves, and Smith. So when Duvall and Will matched up in the National League Championship Series, the feeling was somebody probably sent our office said, hey, looks like we're going to have a guy in the World Series this year. And that was really cool. So I do feel like we're going to have chances every year because of how many guys will be in the big leagues from summer to summer.
Coach, this is Matt McGavin.
Hey, it's Jody again. Speaking of chances, just talk about your chance to get to go and be a part of it and watch it, and how cool you think that's going to be, when you're there, kind of a part of it.
Well, I got to give credit because I got asked by Steve Traeger and Republic Bank, and they actually sponsor the Rays. So I might be getting a ticket through the Rays, but I got to kind of root for the Dodgers. And so it could be like a Seinfeld episode. I might get kicked out of the stadium tonight, depending on what seats I'm in. But I gave Will the heads up, and it's kind of a celebration, as we always try to see our big leaguers when they first make it. Coach Williams will go see Josh Rogers when he got called up. Mundorf actually went and saw McKay when he got called up, and I went and saw Nick Solak. And for one of us to be there, I walked in after practice yesterday and I said, hey, to the coaches, I got invited to go. What do you think? And it was like every coach was like, you got to go, you got to be there. And so it's an honor that I get to go just cheer on one of our own and represent, not just the baseball team or the university, but the city of Louisville. This is one of, like Duval and some of our other big leaguers, Kekef and McGrath and those local guys that make it. I mean, this is one of your own. This is a KCD product. This is a kid who grew up in Louisville, played at the University of Louisville, and now, like Tim said, that young, smiling, fresh face is on TV, and it's hard for him to not be a fan favorite, and so we should all celebrate that.
A follow-up to that, when you recruit guys at such a young age, that the sport, that's just the way it is in baseball. Do you remember when you guys first started recruiting Will, and like how old he would have been that you guys projected him to be a guy that you wanted to offer?
I remember most recruiting stories. People were asking me about Detmers and some of the others, but as the head coach, I'm honestly not the one in the woods doing the labor behind the scenes. And so that's the assistant coaches. But I remember the conversations with Will. I remember he was being recruited by 3 or 4 other schools, and there was actually a Florida school in the mix. And you're always worried that a kid might want to go to Florida. And I was at a fundraiser golf tournament down at Bowling Green. I told my group, guys, you got to play without me. I have to talk to this prospect. I remember standing under a tree and I was throwing everything I had at Will. I mean, I was running out of pitches as to why he should come to Louisville. And I usually have to lean on the guilt about leaving your mom and your dad and your family and your friends and play here in your backyard. And fortunately, he loves his family. I can picture his dad at like every scrimmage we had, and his family got to enjoy this. And it is true, though. You tell local kids or kids from this part of the country, I just have a hard time you leaving this city or this part of the country when your family, it's 56 games, it's 20 scrimmages in the fall. And so, yeah, Jody, I remember that recruiting time and going after him hard. He actually played for the Ohio Elite, which was one of the first places he started catching. He was more of a shortstop pitcher at KCD and in youth ball around here. And we saw him catch with a AAU team out of Ohio. And we thought, wow, he's pretty darn athletic. And so we were blessed he chose to stay home.
Coach, this is Matt McGavey again. Obviously, with the shortened Major League Draft and with the NCAA giving everyone an extra year of eligibility, you're going to have a larger roster this upcoming season. But now that you've had some time to kind of go over the roster and kind of think about how you're going to manage, does it make for perhaps maybe an easier time trying to decide who to throw out there on any given basis, or is it still kind of, what am I going to do?
It actually makes it very difficult in a good way. Like we have depth. Last year, when Benelis and Dunn went down to start the season, and you're playing at another top 5 program opening weekend, we lose that series, but we win the first game. We have to figure out, okay, who's going to play third, who's going to play second, and we start shuffling guys around. And I kept saying, man, we're going to be better off. When Lucas Dunn and Alex Benelis come back, Jared Poland stepped up. Tim Borden stepped up. Guys, Ben Metzinger stepped up. And I remember thinking, we're going to be a better club because of this. Well, now we know we have that depth built in. So I just got to keep these guys going. I got to make sure they're improving. I got to not let them get too high when they're in the lineup and don't get too low when they're not in the lineup. And injuries are going to happen. I've never made excuses when we've had injuries, and I have no reason to make them this year because of the depth we had. So I feel good about that. That competition is helping them. Next year, I never really cry about how young we are, but next year I might throw in a couple digs because this year we're very old. We got a lot of experience. We got a lot of depth.
Yeah, and follow up on what you said about Will as a catcher. He's played, I think, 80 games in the major leagues, has yet to make an error. When Was his defense ahead of his hitting early at U of L?
It was a great hand-eye coordination, and the arm always stood out. The easy action, the ball came out with a lot of zip, a lot of life. Buster Posey, was a shortstop in high school, went to Florida State, actually played a year at shortstop for Florida State. They converted him to a catcher. So we kind of had a blueprint in place that USA Baseball had called, and people were starting to inquire about him. And Buster Posey was kind of the comparison that he's very athletic. You would see him take ground balls at third or second. And as a coach, you'd go, he kind of looks better than my starting third baseman or my starting second baseman. But the value of a catcher is like the quarterback. We're going to get more value out of him behind the plate. So the defense was ahead of the offense. There was athleticism in there. And to this day, he's got a growth mindset and a work ethic. So the offense will catch up. The power will come. All those things will come as long as you've got the talent, the athleticism, and the work ethic. Because like I always say, he was still a first rounder. So they might say, well, he only did this at Louisville and he only did this amount of home runs. He only did this. Wait a second. He was a first rounder, a kid from KCD, undrafted out of high school, came to Louisville, and 3 years later was a first rounder. And give him the credit, but it wasn't like the Dodgers sprinkled magic dust on his head. He had the tools. He had the athleticism. They've done a great job with him. Don't get me wrong, but I got a little perturbed. If you can tell, somebody threw out an article last year, maybe from the West Coast, and it just kind of glorified what he didn't do at Louisville and what he's doing with the Dodgers. And we're all reading the article and we're like, wait a second, this kid was their first pick. Like, he was pretty darn good when he came out of Louisville. And they've done a great job. Give him credit. But he was really darn good for us, too.
Got time for a couple more before we get out of here.
Coach, this is Joe Healy with Baseball America. I'm curious about Lucas Dunn. It looks like you're kind of circling him a little bit as an everyday shortstop at this point. He's done a lot of different things for you. What do you see in him that shows you that he's ready to be an everyday shortstop in the ACC?
Athleticism, the arm strength, and then really the no entitlement. If we say that often about the Will Smiths and the Nick Solaks, and what's made Lucas Dunn was just no entitlement. He just showed up. He's got a smile on his face all the time. I had a player 15 years ago that I kind of compared him to SpongeBob. Nowadays, unfortunately, I don't think these kids know who SpongeBob is, but he's just got that smile on his face, and he plays hard. He smiles, and he's very genuine. When we talked about the 5 rounds and the dilemma he was in, it wasn't, I'll come back if I'm the shortstop. It was genuine. Do you want me back? And if I come back, where do you think I could play? And then he was very immediately said, but coach, I don't care. I'll play anywhere you want. I just want to know. And I said, well, honestly, with Levy leaving the shortstop position, I mean, Tim Borden has done a nice job there, but you got to have more than one. We have a high school freshman coming in, but you just never know. And I said, you've shown you could play second, third, and every position in the outfield. So the scouts are asking if you can play short. I'm going to give you a chance to play short. But I've got scouts that come see us. I've had one organization say, I think he's a big league second baseman. I've had one say, I think he's a big league center fielder. But it's hard to the value of, as we value catching, you value shortstop like that. And I can't say he's a big league shortstop yet, but there's athleticism, there's tools. He just needs reps. He needs the angles. He just needs the game reps, and he'll get better and better. So I think the sky's the limit for Lucas, and that's why I think he's going to be super attractive to an organization because of the versatility he brings.
We got time for one more.
Any thoughts on the New York Giants?
Can he be a receiver for the Giants? No, we need help on the offense, Tim.
Jody, finish this off.
Hey, Dan, what was it like to see I know how Roger is with pitchers and the competition that he likes to create. What was it like in the fall to see the competition for the guys? And, those 3 weekend spots are pretty coveted, and you got a lot of guys that could fill those roles.
Yeah, and that's what makes them great. I think Reed Detmers and Bobby Miller, you always have that internal competition. I think when you see it on these big league clubs, it's usually not just one great starter. There's 2 or 3, and they're all fighting for that. In college baseball, it's the Friday night starter. It's like that crown you wear on your head. And it's cool that the kids are going for that. But in this year, they were going to pitch on the weekend. So there was a lot of camaraderie, especially I think with Albanese, Kieran, and Elliott. They all lived together, and they were all making the transition from reliever to starter. So I think they all just kind of helped each other. Luke Smith just observed. We kind of shut him down this fall, and so he was kind of a coach on the field to help those guys. And Coach Williams would do a great job because, as it showed with Bobby Miller and it shows with several guys, it's not necessarily what day you pitch, it's what you do when you pitch. So just be ready when the ball gets flipped to you. And as you go into those regionals and super regionals and conference tournaments, and hey, the Sunday game is as important as the Friday game. They all count the same. So just be ready. Be ready to help us win and continue to get better.
All right, guys, we'll wrap up on that. I know we got another thing coming at 1:30, so you guys hop on over to that so I don't get in trouble for stealing you away. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have fun, Dan.